The crystal wine glass shattered against the marble floor 3 inches from Elena's feet. "You're an embarrassment," her brother Marcus hissed across the restaurant table, his face flushed crimson beneath the chandelier's golden light. "Do you have any idea what you've cost me? What you've done to this family?" Elena's hands trembled in her lap, her untouched pasta growing cold before her. Around them, the exclusive Italian restaurant hummed with the quiet conversations of Boston's elite, conversations that were now falling silent as heads turned toward their table. "Marcus, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Can we talk about this at home? People are watching." "Let them watch." He stood so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor with a sound like a scream. "Let them all see what a selfish, stupid little—" His hand shot across the table, and Elena flinched, but he only grabbed her wrist, his fingers digging into her skin hard enough to leave marks. She could smell the whiskey on his breath, see the rage in his eyes that had been building since their father's will was read 3 days ago. The will that had left her, the younger sibling, the disappointment, the one who'd chosen art school over business school, a controlling interest in their father's company. "You think you deserve any of this?" Marcus yanked her arm, pulling her halfway out of her seat. "You think father was in his right mind when he—" "I think," a voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk, "that you should remove your hand from the lady." The voice was low, calm, and carried an edge of authority that made Marcus freeze mid-sentence. Elena's gaze shifted past her brother's shoulder to the man approaching their table. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and shadowed planes. His suit was black, impeccably tailored, and probably cost more than most people's cars. But it was his eyes that caught Elena's attention. Pale gray, like winter ice, and fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made the temperature in the room seem to drop 10 degrees. Marcus released Elena's wrist and turned, his expression shifting from rage to confusion, to something that looked disturbingly like fear. "This is a private conversation," Marcus said, but his voice had lost its venom. "I don't know who you think you are, but Dante Moretti." The man, Dante, didn't offer his hand. He didn't need to. The name alone made Marcus go pale. "And I know exactly who you are, Marcus Castellano. I also know that assaulting women in public establishments is frowned upon, even in your circles." Elena had heard the name Moretti before. Everyone in Boston had. The Moretti family didn't just have influence, they were influence. They owned half the city's legitimate businesses, and if the rumors were true, controlled most of the illegitimate ones. The kind of family that politicians courted and prosecutors avoided. The kind of family that didn't make requests. They made offers you didn't refuse. "This is family business," Marcus said, but he'd taken a step back from the table. "My sister is—" "Your sister," Dante interrupted, his gaze shifting to Elena for the first time, "appears to be the only one at this table with any sense of decorum." His eyes met hers and something flickered in their depths, something that made her breath catch. "Are you injured?" Elena shook her head, though her wrist throbbed where Marcus had grabbed it. "I'm fine. Thank you for your concern, Mr. Moretti, but this really is a family matter." "Elena, don't," Marcus warned, and there was genuine panic in his voice now. "Don't get him involved in—" "Too late." Dante pulled out the chair beside Elena and sat down, his movements fluid and unhurried. He gestured to a server who appeared instantly, as if materialized from thin air. "Another place setting, and bring the lady whatever she'd like, something better than that cold pasta." "Sir, I can't," Elena started, but Dante held up a hand. "You're shaking," he observed, his voice gentler now, but still carrying that undercurrent of steel. "When a woman is shaking in a restaurant like this, after her brother has assaulted her in front of witnesses, I consider it my civic duty to ensure her safety. Wouldn't you agree, Marcus?" Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but his eyes darted around the restaurant. Elena followed his gaze and noticed for the first time the 2 men standing near the entrance, both built like linebackers, both watching their table with the focused attention of guard dogs waiting for a command. "Fine," Marcus spat. "Enjoy your knight in shining armor, Elena. But this isn't over. The lawyers will tear that will apart, and when they do, you'll have nothing. Nothing but your precious paintings and your delusions about Father actually loving you." He stormed toward the exit, shouldering past one of Dante's men hard enough to make the man's expression darken. But neither of them moved to stop him. They simply watched him go, then turned their attention back to Dante and Elena. Elena's hands were still trembling as she picked up her water glass. She took a sip, trying to calm the hammering of her heart, trying to process what had just happened. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "You didn't have to do that. I don't want to cause you any trouble, Mr. Moretti." "Dante," he corrected, studying her with those unsettling gray eyes. "And you're not causing me trouble. Your brother, however, is a different story." The server appeared with a fresh menu, and Elena realized the other diners had returned to their conversations, though she could feel their curious glances. Dante's presence had transformed the situation from a scene into an event, something that would be gossiped about in country clubs and boardrooms by morning. "I'm not hungry," Elena said, even though her stomach was in knots for reasons that had nothing to do with food. "Then at least let me buy you a drink," Dante signaled the server. "Bring us a bottle of the Barolo." "The 2015. As the server hurried away, Dante turned his full attention back to Elena, and she felt the weight of that gaze like a physical thing. He was assessing her, she realized, but not the way Marcus had, with contempt and dismissal. Dante was looking at her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. "You're the daughter," he said, not a question. "James Castellano's daughter. I heard about his passing. I'm sorry for your loss." "Did you know my father?" "We had business dealings occasionally. He was a hard man but fair. Honest, which is rare in this city." Dante's expression was unreadable. "I heard he left you the company. That must have come as a surprise. To everyone, apparently." Elena's laugh was bitter, especially to Marcus. "He's been grooming himself for that position since he was 16. He thinks our father made a mistake, that I somehow manipulated him in his final days." "And did you?" The question was direct, almost confrontational, but Elena met his eyes without flinching. "No. I was as shocked as anyone when the lawyers read the will. I never wanted the company. I still don't." "Then why not give it to your brother?" Elena thought about Marcus's hand on her wrist, the rage in his eyes, the whiskey on his breath. She thought about the way he'd treated their father's employees over the years, the scandals that had been quietly buried, the rumors that had followed him through college and beyond. "Because my father didn't want him to have it," she said quietly, "and I think he had good reasons." The wine arrived, and Dante poured 2 glasses with practiced ease. He slid one toward Elena, then raised his own in a small toast. To difficult inheritances, and even more difficult siblings. Elena managed a smile and clinked her glass against his. The wine was rich and complex, warming her from the inside, helping to steady her nerves. She realized she was sitting in one of Boston's most expensive restaurants, sharing wine with one of the city's most dangerous men, and somehow this felt safer than dinner with her own brother. "Why did you help me?" she asked suddenly. "You don't know me. This isn't your problem." Dante was quiet for a moment, swirling the wine in his glass. "I have 3 sisters," he said finally. "If anyone laid hands on them the way your brother just did, there would be consequences. Severe consequences. The fact that you share blood with him doesn't give him the right to hurt you. I appreciate the intervention, truly. But Marcus is right about one thing. This is complicated. Our father's company, the will, the legal battles that are coming. It's going to get ugly." "It's already ugly." Dante leaned back in his chair, somehow making the casual posture look elegant. "Your brother has been borrowing money from some questionable sources. Did you know that?" Elena's stomach dropped. "What?" "Bad debts. Very bad debts. The kind that have interest rates that would make a loan shark blush. Mostly because that's exactly what they are." Dante took another sip of wine. He was counting on inheriting the company so he could access its assets, pay off his creditors. Now that you control everything? He let the sentence hang. He's desperate, Elena finished, her mind racing. That explained the rage, the panic in his eyes. Marcus wasn't just angry about losing the company. He was terrified. How do you know this? I make it my business to know things, especially when those things might affect the stability of this city. Your father's company employs a lot of people, Elena. If it falls apart because your brother makes foolish decisions trying to pay off gambling debts, those people suffer. Elena set down her wine glass, her hands no longer shaking, but her mind reeling. What exactly are you suggesting, Mr. Moretti? Dante. He smiled, and it transformed his face, softening the harsh lines and making him look almost boyish. And I'm suggesting that you might need an ally, someone who can help you navigate the rather complicated situation you've found yourself in. And you're volunteering? I'm offering. There's a difference. He pulled a business card from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. Heavy stock, black with silver lettering. Just a name and a phone number. Your brother owes money to people who work for me. I can make those debts disappear, which removes his immediate motivation to destroy you legally. In exchange, I'd like to discuss a potential business partnership between your father's company and certain ventures of mine. Elena looked at the card, then back at Dante. Her father had taught her to be cautious, to never make deals without understanding all the angles. But her father was gone, and she was drowning in a world she'd never wanted to be part of. And this man, this dangerous, magnetic man, was throwing her a lifeline. What kind of partnership? The legitimate kind. I'm not asking you to launder money or break laws, if that's what you're worried about. Your father's company has distribution networks I could use for several of my entirely legal imports. Wine, mostly. Olive oil. Certain textiles. In return, you get protection from your brother's creditors and access to my, let's call them business consultants. People who can help you learn to run the company, who can advise you on the legal battles ahead. It was too convenient, too perfect. Elena knew there had to be a catch, but as she looked into those winter gray eyes, she couldn't see the trap. Why? She asked. Why do all this for me? Dante was quiet for a long moment, studying her with an intensity that made her skin warm. Because when I walked into this restaurant tonight, I saw a man hurting someone weaker than himself, and I don't tolerate that. Because your father was a good man who trusted you with his legacy, and I think you might surprise everyone. And because... He paused, and something flickered in his expression, something raw and almost vulnerable. Because I have a weakness for brave women who don't know when to quit. Elena's breath caught. The air between them seemed to crackle with tension, and she was suddenly very aware of how close he was sitting, how his attention made her feel seen in a way she hadn't been in years. I need time, she managed, to think about this, to talk to my lawyers. Of course. Dante stood, and Elena realized with surprise that she didn't want him to leave. But don't take too long. Your brother's creditors aren't known for their patience, and when they come calling, they won't be as polite as I've been tonight. He placed several bills on the table, far more than the wine cost, and gestured to his men by the door. They straightened, ready to follow. Dante! Elena called as he turned to leave. He paused, looking back at her with raised eyebrows. Thank you for intervening. Even if I don't take your offer, thank you for that. His smile was small but genuine. Call me, Elena, before your brother does something else stupid. And in the meantime, he nodded toward her wrist, where bruises were already forming. Ice that, and consider filing a police report. Assault is assault, even between siblings. Then he was gone, his men trailing behind him, and Elena was alone at the table with a half-empty bottle of expensive wine and a business card that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She picked up the card, running her thumb over the embossed lettering. Her father had always warned her about the Moretti family, about keeping their distance from that world. But her father had also left her in an impossible situation, and right now, Dante Moretti was the only person who'd offered to help. Elena tucked the card into her purse and signaled for the check. She had a lot to think about, and a decision to make that could change everything. She just hoped she was brave enough to make the right one. 3 days later, Elena stood in her father's office. Her office now, she kept having to remind herself, staring at the stack of legal documents that had arrived that morning. Marcus's lawyers were moving fast, contesting the will on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. They were arguing that their father hadn't been in his right mind, that Elena had manipulated him during his illness. It was a lie, but it was a well-constructed lie, backed by affidavits from business associates who'd been loyal to Marcus, from distant relatives who'd barely known their father, but were suddenly concerned about his final wishes. Elena's own lawyers had been frank. The case could drag on for years. It would cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees, and there was no guarantee she'd win. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Marcus. Last chance to do this the easy way. Sign over the company and I'll drop the lawsuit. Otherwise, I'll destroy you. Her assistant, Margaret, poked her head through the doorway. Ms. Castellano, there's a delivery for you. The courier says it's urgent. What kind of delivery? Margaret's expression was uncertain. Flowers. A lot of flowers. Elena followed her assistant to the reception area and stopped short. The entire front desk was covered in white roses, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, arranged in crystal vases that must have cost a fortune each. There's a card, Margaret said, handing her a small black envelope. Elena's hands were steady as she opened it, though her heart was racing. She recognized the heavy cardstock, the silver lettering. These flowers, like my offer, have a limited lifespan. Don't wait too long to decide. D. Who are they from? Margaret asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Someone who wants to do business with us, Elena said, tucking the card into her pocket. She looked at the roses, at their perfect white petals, and made her decision. Margaret, clear my schedule for this afternoon. I have a meeting to arrange. 20 minutes later, Elena stood outside a sleek office building in downtown Boston, checking the address on Dante's business card for the third time. The lobby was all marble and chrome, expensive and modern, with security that looked more like Secret Service than typical office building guards. She gave her name to the receptionist, and within seconds one of the men from the restaurant appeared. Up close, he was even more imposing. 6'4" of solid muscle, with a scar along his jawline, and eyes that missed nothing. Ms. Castellano, he said, his voice surprisingly polite. Mr. Moretti is expecting you. This way, please. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent, except for the soft classical music playing overhead. Elena's reflection stared back at her from the polished doors, professional in her navy suit, her dark hair pulled back, her expression calm despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. She'd worn a silk scarf around her wrist to hide the bruises. The elevator doors opened directly into a penthouse office that took up the entire floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Boston Harbor. The furniture was modern but warm, rich leather and dark wood. Nothing ostentatious, but everything clearly expensive. Dante stood by the windows, his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking Italian, his voice low and measured, and even though Elena couldn't understand the words, she could hear the authority in his tone. He ended the call and turned, and his expression softened when he saw her. Elena, I'm glad you came. Your flowers were very persuasive. My flowers were a hint. I'm hoping your presence means you're here to discuss something more substantial than my taste in floristry. Elena set her purse down and walked to the windows, needing the moment to gather her thoughts. The city sprawled below them, countless lives playing out in buildings and streets, everyone with their own struggles, their own impossible choices. Marcus's lawyers filed a lawsuit, she said without preamble. They're contesting the will. My lawyers say it could take years to resolve, and there's no guarantee I'll win. In the meantime, the company is in limbo, employees are worried about their jobs, and my brother is sending me threatening messages several times a day. I know, Dante said, moving to stand beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. I also know that he met with 2 of his primary creditors yesterday. They gave him 2 weeks to produce a payment plan or face consequences. Elena turned to look at him. How do you know all this? Because I own one of those debts now. Bought it this morning for considerably more than it's worth. His gray eyes met hers. Consider it a gesture of good faith. You bought my brother's debt? One of them, the largest one? Which means he now owes me, not some thug who'd be happy to break his legs for a missed payment. Dante moved away from the window, gesturing for Elena to sit in one of the leather chairs near his desk. It gives us leverage. It also means I have a vested interest in your success, since I'm considerably less likely to get my money back if your brother destroys the company in a legal battle. Elena sat, her mind racing through the implications. This is manipulation. You're maneuvering me into accepting your offer. Yes, Dante said simply, sitting across from her. But I'm being honest about it, which is more than your brother has done. I'm also offering you a solution that benefits everyone. You keep the company. Your employees keep their jobs. Your brother stays alive and eventually pays back what he owes. And I get a legitimate business partnership that expands my portfolio. And what do you really get? There's always something else. Men like you don't help women like me out of the goodness of their hearts. Dante leaned back in his chair, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked almost uncertain. You want honesty? Fine. Yes, the business partnership is valuable. Yes, having a connection to your father's distribution networks helps me expand into markets I've been trying to access for years. But there's also... He paused, choosing his words carefully. When I saw your brother grab you in that restaurant, something in me snapped. I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of, Elena. I've made choices that keep me awake at night. But I've never hurt someone weaker than myself, and I've never stood by while someone else did. So part of this, maybe the biggest part, is that I genuinely want to help you. Because you have sisters. Because you remind me of them. Brave, stubborn, smarter than anyone gives them credit for. The kind of woman who deserves better than what your family has given you. The sincerity in his voice made Elena's throat tight. She looked down at her hands, at the scarf still hiding her bruised wrist, and made her decision. I want terms in writing, she said. A contract that specifies exactly what this partnership entails, what you get, what I get, and what happens if either of us wants out. I want my lawyers to review everything, and I want it clear that this is a business arrangement, nothing more. Dante's smile was slow and satisfied. Of course, I'll have my legal team draw up a contract by tomorrow morning. You can take all the time you need to review it with your advisors. And my brother's debt? Frozen. No interest accruing. No payment demands. Until we have our partnership established, and you have the breathing room to handle the legal battle. Dante stood and extended his hand. Do we have a deal? Elena stood as well, looking at his outstretched hand. This was it. The moment that would change everything. She could walk away, try to fight Marcus and his lawyers and his creditors on her own. Or she could take the hand of one of Boston's most powerful men and step into a world she'd spent her whole life avoiding. She shook his hand, and the moment their palms touched, she felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with business deals or legal contracts. We have a deal, she said. Dante's fingers tightened around hers for just a moment longer than necessary, and she saw something flicker in his eyes, something heated and dangerous and utterly magnetic. Then welcome to the partnership, Elena Castellano, he said softly. Something tells me this is going to be very interesting. As she left his office an hour later, contract negotiations scheduled for the following day, Elena realized she'd just made a deal with a man who was either her salvation or her downfall. She just wasn't sure which. The next 3 months passed in a blur of contracts, court dates, and late-night strategy sessions. True to his word, Dante provided her with business consultants who taught her everything about running her father's company, from supply chain management to employee relations to financial forecasting. His lawyers worked alongside hers, building an ironclad defense against Marcus's lawsuit. But it was the time spent with Dante himself that Elena found most unsettling. He attended every major meeting, his presence a silent reminder to her father's board of directors that she wasn't alone. He taught her how to read people, how to spot lies and manipulation, how to project authority even when she felt like an imposter. And slowly, carefully, he became something more than a business partner. He became a friend. It started small, coffee meetings that ran long, conversations that drifted from business to personal, moments where his guard came down and she saw the man beneath the reputation. He told her about growing up in a family where power was everything, about the pressure to be perfect, about the weight of expectations that felt like they'd crush him. She told him about her father, about the years of feeling invisible next to Marcus's ambition, about her dreams of being an artist that had been slowly suffocated by family obligation. And somewhere between contract negotiations and court appearances, somewhere between strategy sessions and business dinners, Elena realized she was falling for him. It terrified her. The night before the final court hearing on Marcus's lawsuit, Elena worked late in her office, reviewing documents until her eyes burned. It was past midnight when she finally gave up, gathering her things to head home. The building was empty, her footsteps echoing in the marble lobby. She pushed through the front doors and stopped short. Marcus stood on the sidewalk, swaying slightly, unmistakably drunk. "There she is," he slurred, pointing at her with the hand that held a bottle. "The thief. The manipulator. Daddy's little favorite." Elena's hand went to her phone, already dialing. Security should have stopped him. Should have... "They're not coming," Marcus said, reading her expression. "I sent them on a wild goose chase. Told them I saw someone breaking into the parking garage." His laugh was bitter. "Funny how easy it is to lie when you've had practice." "Marcus, you're drunk. Go home. We can talk about this tomorrow, after the hearing." "After the hearing," he repeated mockingly. "After you steal everything that should have been mine. After you destroy our family name with your alliance with criminals." "Dante isn't..." "Don't." Marcus's expression twisted with rage. "Don't defend that man to me. Do you have any idea what people are saying? That you're sleeping with him? That you sold yourself to the mob for protection? Our father would be ashamed." The words hit like physical blows, but Elena kept her voice steady. "Our father left the company to me because he knew I'd protect it. Because he knew you'd destroy it, just like you're destroying yourself now. Go home, Marcus. Get some help. I'll make sure you have enough money to live comfortably, to pay off your debts, but I won't let you drag the company down with you." Marcus moved faster than she expected, closing the distance between them, and Elena backed against the building's glass facade. She could smell the alcohol, see the desperation and rage warring in his eyes. "You don't get to make those decisions," he hissed. "You don't get to decide my future." His hand shot out, and Elena flinched, throwing up her arms to protect her face. But the blow never landed. Dante appeared from nowhere, his hand locked around Marcus's wrist, stopping the strike mid-swing. Two of his men materialized from the shadows, flanking Marcus on either side. "You were warned," Dante said, his voice deadly calm. "I was very clear about the consequences if you went near Elena again." Marcus tried to pull free, but Dante's grip was iron. "This is between me and my sister. You have no right." "I have every right." Dante released Marcus's wrist and stepped between him and Elena, his body a barrier, his presence radiating controlled violence. "You're going to leave now. You're going to go home, sleep this off, and tomorrow you're going to show up to court where you're going to lose. And then you're going to accept the very generous settlement Elena is offering you and disappear from her life. Because if you don't..." He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a shout. "If you ever threaten her again, if you even look at her wrong, I will make sure you understand exactly how unpleasant your life can become. And trust me, Marcus, you don't want that education." Elena had never seen Marcus look truly afraid before, but she saw it now. He stumbled backward, nearly falling, and Dante's men caught him. steadying him with grips that looked supportive, but probably hurt. "Take him home," Dante said without looking at them. "Make sure he arrives safely. Watch his apartment until morning." The men nodded and half carried, half dragged Marcus toward a waiting car. Elena watched them go, her heart hammering, adrenaline making her hands shake. "Are you all right?" Dante turned to her, his expression transforming from cold fury to concern in an instant. His hands came up to cup her face, his touch gentle despite the violence he'd just threatened. "Did he hurt you?" "No, you stopped him." Elena's voice cracked. "How did you know he'd be here?" "I've had someone watching him since the restaurant incident. When he left his apartment tonight, clearly intoxicated, my people alerted me. I was worried about exactly this scenario." His thumbs brushed across her cheekbones, and Elena realized there were tears on her face. "I'm sorry I didn't get here sooner. You saved me," she whispered. "Again. Always." The word was a promise, fierce and absolute. "For as long as you need me, Elena, I will always be here." The space between them seemed to shrink, and Elena was suddenly, painfully aware of his hands on her face, of the heat of his body, of the way his gray eyes had darkened to storm clouds. Her hands came up to rest on his chest, and she could feel his heart beating as fast as hers. "This is complicated," she said, but she didn't pull away. "We have a business partnership, my brother's lawsuit. The deal we made is just business," Dante finished, but his gaze dropped to her lips. "Except it hasn't been just business for a while now, has it?" "No," Elena admitted. "It hasn't." He kissed her then, and the world fell away. His lips were soft despite his hard edges, his touch reverent despite his dangerous reputation. Elena melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, kissing him back with all the pent-up longing and fear and desperate hope she'd been carrying for months. When they finally broke apart, both. Breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. "Come home with me," he said quietly. "You shouldn't be alone tonight, not after this." "Dante, not for anything you're not ready for," he clarified quickly. "Just let me know you're safe. Let me keep watch while you sleep. Please." Elena thought about her empty apartment, about the fear that would keep her awake all night, about the way Marcus's rage had looked in his eyes. And she thought about Dante, about the way he'd protected her, about the way his presence made her feel safer than she'd felt in years. "Okay," she said. "Yes." His penthouse was even more impressive than his office, all clean lines and expensive art, with windows that showcased the glittering city below. He poured her a glass of wine while she stood by the windows, trying to process everything that had happened. "Your brother will be fine," Dante said, handing her the glass. "Angry, humiliated, but fine. My people won't hurt him. They'll just ensure he doesn't do anything else stupid tonight. Thank you." Elena took a sip of wine, letting the warmth settle her nerves. "For everything. I know I've said it before, but you don't owe me thanks." Dante set down his own glass and moved closer, his hand coming up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "I told you why I did this. Because you deserved better. Because I wanted to help. And because..." He hesitated, vulnerability flickering across his features. "Because from the moment I saw you in that restaurant, something in me recognized something in you. Like calling to like." "Dante Moretti, are you saying you have a weakness for stubborn women who are in over their heads?" His smile was soft, almost shy. "I'm saying I have a weakness for you, specifically. And it's been driving me insane trying to maintain professional distance when all I want is this." He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, and Elena let herself sink into it. Let herself forget about lawsuits and family drama and complicated business partnerships. In this moment in his arms, she was just a woman falling for a man who made her feel seen, protected, cherished. When they finally pulled apart, Dante led her to the guest room, giving her space and clothes to sleep in, But before he left, he turned at the door. "Tomorrow," he said, "your brother loses. The court will uphold your father's will. You'll officially be the head of the company, and the partnership between us will be rock solid." He paused. "But after that, after all the business is settled, I'd like to take you to dinner. Not as your business partner, as the man who can't stop thinking about you." Elena's smile was tired, but genuine. "I'd like that." "Good. Now sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a long day, but it ends with your victory." He was right. The next day, the judge ruled in Elena's favor, dismissing Marcus's lawsuit with prejudice. The company was officially hers, the partnership with Dante formalized, and Marcus was escorted from the courthouse, looking defeated and small. But it was what happened after that Elena would remember forever. 6 months after the court victory, Elena stood in the same restaurant where this had all begun, but everything was different now. The company was thriving under her leadership, with Dante's imports flowing through their distribution networks and profits climbing steadily. Marcus had taken his settlement and moved to California, and though they weren't close, at least the animosity had faded to cold distance. And Elena had fallen completely, irrevocably in love with Dante Moretti. Their relationship had developed slowly, carefully, like a flower unfurling in sunlight. Dinner dates that turned into long conversations. Quiet evenings at his penthouse or her apartment. Moments of passion balanced with deep emotional connection. He showed her parts of himself he'd never shown anyone. His fears, his regrets, his dreams for a life that was more than just power and control. She showed him her art, the paintings she'd abandoned when her father got sick, and he'd commissioned a studio for her in one of his buildings. A space where she could create again, where she could be both the businesswoman and the artist, both the heir and the dreamer. Tonight, though, something was different. Dante had insisted they return to this restaurant, to the scene of their first meeting. He'd reserved the entire place, just for them, and now they sat at the same table where he'd first intervened in her life. "Do you remember the first time we were here?" he asked, his hand covering hers on the white tablecloth. "How could I forget? My brother threw a wine glass at me, and you appeared like some dangerous guardian angel." Dante smiled. "I took one look at you, terrified, but refusing to back down, protecting yourself even when you were clearly outmatched. And I knew my life was about to change." "Your life?" "Mine was the one being taken over by a mysterious crime boss." "Alleged crime boss," he corrected with a grin. "And I prefer businessman with complicated interests. Sounds better in the society pages." Elena laughed, but her amusement faded when Dante stood and moved to kneel beside her chair. Her heart stopped as he pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. "6 months ago," he said, his gray eyes locked on hers, "I made you a business offer. Tonight I want to make you a different kind of offer." He opened the box, revealing a ring, a single diamond surrounded by smaller stones, elegant and timeless. "Elena Castellano, you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've made me want to be better, to build something that's not just about power, but about partnership, about love. Marry me, be my wife, my equal, my partner in everything." Elena's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Around them, Dante's men, who had become familiar faces over the months, protectors and friends in their own way, watched with grins. "You're serious," she whispered. "Completely, utterly, irrevocably serious." Dante's hand trembled slightly as he held the ring. "I know my world is complicated. I know there will be challenges. But I swear to you, Elena, I will spend every day of my life protecting you, supporting you, loving you. You'll never face anything alone again." Elena thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, frightened, lost, drowning in responsibilities she never wanted. And she thought about the woman she was now, confident, capable, surrounded by people who respected her. Dante hadn't saved her. He'd given her the tools to save herself. And in the process, he'd given her his heart. Yes, she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Yes, Dante, I'll marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. The kiss they shared was witnessed by his grinning men and the restaurant staff who'd been in on the surprise, and Elena heard applause echo through the space. When they finally broke apart, Dante cupped her face in his hands, his expression fierce with love and possession. You're mine now, he said softly, and I'm yours. Completely. You were always mine, Elena replied, smiling through her tears. From the moment you told my brother he was messed up. Technically, I said he was in trouble, but I like your version better. They laughed together, and as Dante led her out of the restaurant toward their future, Elena reflected on how her life had transformed. She'd started with nothing but fear and an unwanted inheritance. She'd ended with a thriving company, a rediscovered passion for art, and a man who loved her enough to threaten her brother with creative violence. What are you thinking? Dante asked as they walked to his car, their hands intertwined. That my father would be proud, Elena said. Not just of me running the company, but of who I chose to run it with, of who I chose to spend my life with. Dante stopped and turned to her, the city lights casting shadows across his face. I'll make you a promise, Elena. Every day for the rest of our lives, I will make sure you never regret saying yes tonight. You'll never face another threatening brother, another impossible situation, another moment of fear without me standing beside you. I know, Elena said, and she meant it. Because that's who you are. My dangerous guardian angel. My partner. My love. He kissed her again, right there on the street, and Elena Castellano, soon to be Elena Moretti, felt something she hadn't felt in years. Complete and utter peace. She'd inherited more than a company from her father. She'd inherited the strength to forge her own path, to choose her own allies, to build her own life. And that life, complicated and unconventional as it was more beautiful than anything she could have imagined. The Mafia boss and the artist, the protector and the brave woman who didn't need saving but accepted partnership. Together they'd build an empire not just of business and power, but of love, respect, and unshakable loyalty. And if anyone tried to threaten what they'd built, well, they'd learn very quickly that Elena Moretti had learned from the best how to handle problems. With grace, determination, and a dangerous man who'd move heaven and earth to protect her. It was, she thought, as Dante opened the car door for her, the perfect ending. Or rather, the perfect beginning. But fate, it seemed, had one more test in store. 3 weeks before the wedding, Elena was working late at the office when her phone rang. An unknown number, local area code. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Elena Castellano? The voice was female, young and shaking with fear. Speaking. Who is this? My name is Sophia Moretti. I'm Dante's youngest sister, and I need your help. Please, you have to come alone, and you can't tell Dante. If he finds out, if anyone from the family finds out, they'll kill him. Elena's blood went cold. Kill who? What are you talking about? My boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend. I tried to break up with him 3 months ago, but he won't leave me alone. He's been threatening me, following me, and tonight he showed up at my apartment with a gun. He says if I don't take him back, if I don't leave with him right now, he's going to go after my family, starting with Dante. Sophia's voice broke on a sob. I know what my brothers would do if they found out. They'd kill him, and then they'd end up in prison, and it would destroy everything. But I can't let him hurt anyone. Please, you're the only person I can think of who might understand, who might be able to help without it turning into a bloodbath. Every instinct told Elena to call Dante immediately, but she heard the desperation in Sophia's voice, the genuine terror. She thought about Dante's 3 sisters, the way his face softened whenever he talked about protecting them. If this situation exploded, if someone died, it would devastate him. Where are you? Elena asked, already grabbing her keys. Sophia gave her an address in South Boston, a neighborhood Elena knew was rough, even by city standards. Please hurry, and please don't tell anyone. I'm begging you." The line went dead. Elena stood in her office, phone in hand, every rational part of her brain screaming that this was a trap, that she should call Dante, that going alone was insane. But she thought about Sophia's voice, about the fear in it, about how she'd specifically said the family would kill her boyfriend if they found out. She compromised. She sent a text to Dante. "Have to handle something unexpected. We'll explain later. Love you." Vague enough not to worry him immediately, specific enough that if something went wrong, he'd know she'd gone somewhere. Then she drove to South Boston. The address was a run-down apartment building with a broken front door and graffiti, covering the walls. Elena's hands shook as she climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, every shadow making her jump. She found the apartment number Sophia had given her and knocked. The door opened immediately, and Elena found herself face to face with a young woman who looked like a feminine version of Dante. Same dark hair, same gray eyes, but terrified in a way Elena had never seen in her fiancé. "Thank God you came," Sophia said, pulling her inside. "He's in the bedroom. He's been drinking, and he's getting more agitated. I don't know how much longer I can keep him calm." The apartment was small and cluttered, with the stale smell of cigarettes and something Elena couldn't identify. She could hear shouting from behind a closed door, a male voice slurring words together. "Sophia, why me?" Elena asked, keeping her voice low. "Why not call the police?" "Because he's the son of a police captain. His father has connections everywhere. If I call the cops, they'll either arrest me for making false accusations, or they'll tip off his dad. And then..." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "And I couldn't call Dante, because I know exactly what he'd do. He'd come here and kill him, and I can't let that happen. But you're different. You're not part of that world. Not really. You might be able to talk sense into him, convince him to leave, to get help." Before Elena could respond, the bedroom door burst open, and a man stumbled out. He was in his late 20s, muscular but disheveled, with wild eyes and a gun hanging loosely in his right hand. "Who the hell is this?" he demanded, swinging the gun toward Elena. "Sophia, I told you not to call anyone." "She's my friend," Sophia said quickly, moving between Elena and the gun. "Just a friend who came to check on me. Ryan, please, put the gun down. You're scaring me." "Good! You should be scared." Ryan's voice was slurred, his movements uncoordinated. "You think you can just walk away from me, after everything I've done for you? After I protected you from your psycho family?" Elena's mind raced. She recognized the signs, the paranoia, the possessiveness, the way he kept the gun pointed at them even as he swayed on his feet. This wasn't just about a breakup. This was about control, about power, about a man who couldn't accept rejection. "Ryan," she said, her voice calm despite the terror clawing at her throat. "My name is Elena. I'm not here to cause problems. I just want to help." "Help?" He laughed, the sound bitter and broken. "No one can help. She's poisoned now, corrupted by that family of criminals. Do you know who her brother is? Do you know what he does? And she wants to leave me for that world?" "I'm not leaving you for anyone," Sophia said, her voice shaking. "I'm leaving because you hurt me, Ryan. Because you won't get help for your drinking. Because you follow me and threaten me and..." "Shut up!" Ryan screamed, and Elena saw his finger tighten on the trigger. She moved without thinking, stepping forward and grabbing Sophia's arm, pulling the younger woman behind her. "Ryan, look at me," Elena commanded, and something in her voice, the authority she'd learned from months of running a company, from standing up to her brother, from loving a man who'd taught her strength, made him focus on her. "The gun isn't going to fix this. Threatening Sophia isn't going to make her love you again. All you're doing is proving that she was right to leave." "You don't understand," he said, but the gun lowered slightly. "I love her. I'd do anything for her." "Then let her go." Elena took a careful step forward. "If you really love her, let her be happy. Get the help you need. Put the gun down, walk away, and save whatever dignity you have left." "I can't," Ryan's voice cracked. If I lose her, I have nothing. My job is gone. My dad won't speak to me. I've got nothing left. Then you rebuild, Elena said softly. You get sober, you get therapy, you become someone she could actually respect. But you can't do any of that while you're standing here waving a gun around. For a moment, Elena thought she'd gotten through to him. His hand wavered, the gun dipping toward the floor. But then the apartment door crashed open, and Dante burst in with 4 of his men, and everything happened at once. Ryan spun toward the noise, the gun coming up. Elena screamed. Dante moved faster than she'd ever seen him move, crossing the room in 2 strides, his hand locking around Ryan's wrist. There was a struggle, a sharp crack, and the gun clattered to the floor. Ryan went down hard, Dante's knee in his back, one arm twisted at an angle that made Sophia cry out. Dante's men swept the apartment, checking rooms, securing the space with military precision. "Don't kill him!" Sophia shouted, rushing forward. "Dante, please! Don't kill him!" Dante's eyes were wild, feral, locked on Elena with an intensity that was almost frightening. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "Did he touch you?" "I'm fine," Elena managed. "How did you— Your text? You never say something unexpected unless something's wrong. I tracked your phone." He looked at Sophia then, and his expression shifted from rage to heartbreak. "You called her instead of me? You put her in danger instead of coming to your family? Because I knew you'd do exactly this." Sophia gestured at Ryan, who was whimpering on the floor. "I knew you'd hurt him, and then you'd end up in trouble, and I couldn't bear that. Elena isn't part of this world. She could talk to him, reason with him. He had a gun on her," Dante roared, and Elena had never heard him sound like that. Completely out of control, voice cracking with fear and fury. "He could have killed her, Sophia. He could have killed you both." "But he didn't," Elena said, moving to Dante's side and placing her hand on his shoulder. She felt the tension in him, the barely restrained violence. "Dante, look at me. We're both okay. Sophia is okay. Now we need to handle this carefully." One of Dante's men had already picked up the gun, clearing it and securing it. Another was on the phone, speaking in rapid Italian. Ryan had gone silent, either passed out or smart enough to play dead. "Get him out of here," Dante said finally, his voice deadly calm. "Take him somewhere quiet. I'll deal with him later." "No!" Sophia grabbed Dante's arm. "You can't hurt him. Please, Dante, he's sick. He needs help, not— He threatened my sister with a gun. He put my fiancé in danger. There are consequences for that, Sophia." Elena squeezed Dante's shoulder harder, making him look at her. "There are better ways to handle this. Legal ways. Legal ways that take too long and leave him free to come back for another attempt. Legal ways that don't put you in prison," Elena countered. "That don't destroy everything we've built. Dante, I know you want to protect your sister, but killing him, or even hurting him, that's not protection. That's revenge. And it will only make things worse." She could see the war in his eyes, the struggle between his instincts and his reason. Finally, he looked at his men. "Call someone at the district attorney's office, the one who owes us the favor from last year. Tell them we have a domestic violence situation with weapons involved, and we need immediate intervention. Restraining order, psychiatric evaluation, the works." He looked back at Ryan, contempt dripping from every word. "He's going to get help whether he wants it or not. And if he ever comes near my sister again, if he even thinks about contacting her, then we have this conversation my way." His men nodded and began making calls. Elena felt some of the tension leave Dante's body, though his eyes were still stormy when he looked at Sophia. "We're going to talk about this," he said quietly. "About why you didn't call me. About why you thought putting yourself and Elena in danger was better than trusting your family." "I did trust family," Sophia said, tears streaming down her face. "I trusted Elena. Because I knew she'd understand that sometimes the right thing isn't the violent thing. That sometimes being strong means finding another way." Dante's expression softened slightly, and he pulled his sister into a hug. "You scared me," he said into her hair, When I got Elena's text, when I tracked her phone here, when I realized what might be happening. Sophia, you can't do this. You can't shut us out when you're in trouble. I'm sorry, Sophia whispered. I just wanted to protect you. To protect everyone. That's my job, Dante said. Protecting you is always my job. 20 minutes later, the police, real police, not anyone connected to Ryan's father, arrived along with a crisis counselor and 2 attorneys that Dante's people had summoned. Ryan was taken into custody, still too drunk and traumatized to resist. Sophia gave her statement while Elena sat beside her, holding her hand. As the apartment finally emptied, Dante pulled Elena aside, his hands cupping her face with desperate gentleness. You could have died, he said, his voice rough. You walked into an apartment with an armed, unstable man, and you could have died. But I didn't. And Sophia is safe, and you didn't do something you'd regret. I would have killed him. Dante's admission was raw, honest. If he'd hurt you, if I'd walked in here and found you bleeding, I would have killed him without hesitation. Consequences be damned. I know, Elena said softly. That's why Sophia called me. Because she knew you loved her enough to destroy yourself protecting her. But Dante, the best protection you can give the people you love isn't violence. It's being there for them. Being someone they can trust with their fears, even the ones that scare them. You're terrifying, Dante said, but there was admiration in his voice. You walked into danger, talked down an armed man, and now you're lecturing me about emotional intelligence. How did I get so lucky? You intervened when my brother was abusing me. Karma. Dante laughed despite everything, pulling her into his arms and holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. When we get married, he said into her hair, I'm hiring a full security detail for you. People who can follow you when you decide to play hero, who can keep you safe from your own bravery. Only if they're very discreet, Elena countered. I'm not having bodyguards hovering over me during board meetings. Negotiable. Dante pulled back enough to kiss her, and Elena felt the fear and adrenaline finally starting to drain away, replaced by the solid certainty of his love. But Elena, promise me something. Next time someone calls you with a crisis, you tell me. Even if they beg you not to. Even if you think you can handle it alone. You tell me, because we're partners. In everything. I promise, Elena said. As long as you promise to trust that sometimes my way, the talking, negotiating, finding peaceful solutions way, is just as effective as your way. Your way almost got you killed tonight. Your way would have gotten you arrested. I'd say we're even. Dante shook his head, but he was smiling now, the tension finally leaving his shoulders. We're going to be a disaster as a married couple, aren't we? Probably, Elena agreed. But at least we'll never be bored. Sophia emerged from giving her statement, looking exhausted but relieved. They're getting Ryan into a treatment program, she said. Court-ordered, so he can't refuse, and there's a restraining order in place. If he violates it, he goes to jail, no questions asked. Good, Dante said. Then, softer, Are you okay, Piccola? I will be. Sophia looked at Elena. Thank you for coming, for not judging me, for not making me feel stupid for caring about what happened to him despite everything. You're not stupid, Elena said firmly. You're compassionate, and that's something this family needs more of. The drive home was quiet. Dante's hand locked around Elena's the entire way. When they finally reached his penthouse, when the door closed behind them and they were alone, he pulled her into his arms again. I love you, he said fiercely. I love your bravery and your compassion and your absolute refusal to do things the easy way. But Elena, you have to understand. When it comes to your safety, I'm not rational. I'm not the calm, controlled businessman. I'm the man who would burn the world down if someone hurt you. I know, Elena said, wrapping her arms around him. And I love you for it. But Dante, I need you to trust that I'm strong enough to handle danger, smart enough to know when I'm in over my head, and wise enough to have texted you before I went into that apartment. I knew you'd track my phone. I knew you'd come if I needed you. I just had to try my way first." "Your way worked," Dante admitted grudgingly. "You talked him down when my way would have just escalated everything. And your way got there in time to make sure we were both safe. We're better together, remember? That's the whole point of this partnership." Dante kissed her then, slow and deep, and Elena felt all the fear and adrenaline transform into something else entirely. Relief, love, the bone-deep certainty that she'd found someone who would always come for her, who would always have her back, even when he disagreed with her choices. 3 weeks, he murmured against her lips. 3 weeks until you're Elena Moretti, and then I get to protect you officially. You've been protecting me officially since the day we signed that partnership agreement. That was business. This is forever." Elena smiled, pulling him closer. Forever sounds perfect. The wedding, when it finally happened, was a blend of 2 worlds, the legitimate business community and the more shadowy figures from Dante's life, Elena's artist friends, and the few family members she'd reconciled with, all gathered in a historic Boston venue to watch the Mafia boss and the artist exchange vows. Sophia stood as one of Elena's bridesmaids, healthy and whole, having started therapy and slowly rebuilding her confidence. Marcus attended, but sat in the back, keeping his distance, respecting the boundaries Elena had set. He'd even sent a gift, a painting from their father's collection that Elena had always loved. When Dante slipped the wedding ring onto Elena's finger, when the priest pronounced them husband and wife, when he kissed her in front of everyone who'd doubted them, Elena felt something click into place. This was her life now, complicated, unconventional, occasionally dangerous, but wholly hers. They'd started with a moment of violence, with her brother's rage and Dante's intervention. They'd navigated business partnerships and legal battles and armed confrontations. And through it all, they'd chosen each other, again and again in ways both large and small. As they danced at the reception, Dante's arms around her, Elena reflected on how much had changed. She was no longer the frightened woman being assaulted in a restaurant. She was a CEO, an artist, a woman who'd walked into danger to protect someone she barely knew and walked out stronger for it. "What are you thinking?" Dante asked, his hand warm on the small of her back. "That I'm grateful my brother threw that wine glass." Dante laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "That's a very specific thing to be grateful for. If he hadn't, you wouldn't have intervened. We wouldn't have met. None of this would have happened. I like to think we would have found each other eventually. Some things are just meant to be." Elena leaned her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, and smiled. Maybe he was right. Maybe they were always meant to find each other, the man who protected with fierce devotion and the woman who fought with compassionate strength. Together, they'd built something beautiful from chaos. And whatever came next, whatever challenges or dangers or impossible situations life threw at them, Elena knew they'd face it the same way they'd faced everything else. Together, as partners, as equals, as 2 people who'd chosen love over fear, connection over isolation, hope over despair. Mr. and Mrs. Moretti, the Mafia boss and his artist bride, ready to take on the world, one impossible situation at a time. And if anyone doubted their ability to handle whatever came next, well, they'd learn soon enough that the most dangerous thing in Boston wasn't Dante Moretti's reputation, or his connections, or his willingness to protect what was his. It was the combined force of 2 people who loved each other enough to be both ruthless and merciful, both dangerous and kind, both fierce protectors and gentle healers. It was, Elena thought, as Dante spun her across the dance floor, the perfect balance. And it was only the beginning.